Strongest Man on Earth 2025, we have the lineup. Brian Shaw recently on his YouTube channel has announced the full lineup for this year's Strongest Man on Earth. A fantastic lineup, 16 athletes.
Yeah, it's a big lineup.
Big lineup, brutal events.
Yeah, really brutal, yeah.
And for a lot of people, this is a lot of people's favourite show of the year. This is now one of the staples on the calendar, one of the big four, as we like to call them. And I know some people out there see this as the biggest. 16 athletes, 8 events. There is nowhere to hide. Every single event is brutally hard.
So many max events this year as well. But we'll get into that in a second. Let's just recap and remind ourselves of the guys that had already been confirmed. Starting with last year's winner, Mitchell Hooper.
Third place at last year's Strongest Man on Earth and second place at this year's Arnold Classic, Lucas Hatton.
Fourth place at last year's Strongest Man on Earth and two-time Shore Classic winner, Trey Mitchell.
Fifth place from last year's Strongest Man on Earth, Austin Andrade.
Second place at last year's Rogue Invitational, Tom Stoltman.
The winner of last year's North America's Strongest Man, Maxime Boudreau.
And last year's winner of the Shore Classic Open, Josh Spurgeon. So those are the guys who have qualified through the official route, which is top 5 at last year's Strongest Man on Earth, top 3 at the Arnold's or the Rogue Invitational, and the winner, top 3 at World's Strongest Man, and also the winner of North America's Strongest Man last year.
Yeah, this is Brian's kind of qualifying system that he has, and we haven't mentioned the top 3 at World's Strongest Man this year. Obviously, you had Mitchell Hooper and Tom Stoltman in second and third place.
Yes.
We had a new guy on the list taking first place at World's Strongest Man. That man is Rain O'Neill, and he has also been invited and accepted the invitation to this year's Strongest Man on Earth. Now, before we go on, there is one guy that didn't accept his invitation.
Yes.
Brian Shaw mentioned this in his video. Hafthor Bjornsson has decided to decline the invitation this year. He's got other things that he's focused on right now. It's a shame not to see him in this lineup. I always love seeing Thor compete, a beast of a strongman. But he's going to pass up on this year's competition.
Fair enough. So now we've kind of exhausted the official qualifying route, it essentially becomes a bit of an invitational, doesn't it?
Very much so.
Yes, yeah. And Brian has spoken about this, and we're going to go into it in further detail because there's a lot of chatter online right now about who has, and more importantly, who hasn't been invited. But we're starting off with Evan Singleton, who has been invited. Now, to me, Evan, absolutely no surprise. Obviously, he just got injured at the World's Strongest Man, but Evan is very much a staple in the strongman scene right now. He is one of the top guys. He was 4th at last year's Rogue Invitational also.
He was, and he was doing really well at the Strongest Man on Earth last year. Had a few unlucky event results. Evan in shape, though, is a very dangerous man. He's had a little bit of bad luck this last sort of 6 months. He's not been at his absolute best. But yes, when Evan is in shape, he's a contender at any competition. Just needs to keep the body focused and healthy. And, you know, Evan could well be a winner of any show.
So a man returning to the Strongest Man on Earth is Bobby Thompson. Now, Bobby placed 8th at the competition last year. Again, it was out of 16, so he was halfway, mid-pack. Now, Bobby's not had the best of luck recently when it comes to his health and injuries. And I really feel this is an opportunity for Bobby to prove, because we know in shape, Bobby Thompson, 2-time podium finisher at the Arnold Strongman Classic. We know how strong he is in shape. He's one of the names that's causing a lot of chatter, or what's Bobby been doing? But this is an important opportunity for Bobby, I feel. He
needs to take it as well. And this is the kind of show that suits Bobby Thompson as well. He is a powerhouse. He likes the max events, the heavy events. The heavier, the better.
Yeah.
He doesn't like running around so much. He's not bad in terms of like speed, but in terms of like, you know, the athletic ability, some of the lighter events where some of these lighter guys can kind of beat him. He's not keen on the light events. He likes it super heavy. The Arnold's Strongest Man on Earth, they're the competitions that suit him. He's always in contention whenever there's a deadlift. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does, because if he comes in shape, he can always surprise people. Next athlete from Canada is Wesley Dewinski. He was 9th place at the Strongest Man on Earth last year, also placed 6th at World's Strongest Man last year. Didn't have the result he wanted at this year's World's Strongest Man, so he'll want redemption for that at this year's Strongest Man on Earth.
So the next man on the list is Thomas Evans. Now, Thomas placed 10th at this competition last year. And interestingly, looking at last year's results, the whole of the top 10 from last year have been re-invited. So I think it's quite obvious that Brian is very heavily weighting his show over other shows. Makes sense, because if you want to know who's going to do well in the Strongest Man on Earth, look at the results of the Strongest Man on Earth. Tom was having such a good run at last year's Rogue Invitational. Also, unfortunately, picked up a bicep injury there, which put him out for a few months, actually. He ended up having to have surgery.
Yeah.
Didn't make the final of this year's World's Strongest Man, but we've seen how good Thomas can be in shape.
I think World's Strongest Man was a little bit too soon.
Maybe.
He's another powerhouse, big, powerful man. I think the type of events they have at Strongest Man on Earth suit him. And yeah, like you said, Brian, looking at the top 10 from last year, surviving this show is important. He wants athletes that are robust, that can kind of get through these heavy events.
There's definitely a theme running through these athletes, isn't there?
Big boys
competing. There are some big boys.
So very excited to see this next athlete invited to the roster for the Strongest Man on Earth. The young Czech, Andrej Foitu, absolute powerhouse when it comes to the log, and with a max log in this event. I'm sure he is licking his chops at that one.
Licking his chops. Andre just made his first World's Strongest Man final where he placed 6th. A bit of redemption for him, actually, because he was 4th at Europe's Strongest Man once again, just missing the page.
He's one of the top youngsters in the sport right now as well. He was the youngest guy at World's Strongest Man. I believe he'll be the youngest athlete in this lineup as well.
He has the junior log lift world record as well.
And that's why I know he's going to be looking forward to the log, aren't he, Liz?
So next on the list is another newcomer to the Strongest Man on Earth, and it's Eddie Williams, who just made his first World's Strongest Man final, and last year he made his first Giants Live podium. So Eddie's one of those athletes that feels like he's been around for a while now, but we are really seeing those improvements with his performances, aren't we?
Definitely, yeah. Eddie has been around for a couple of years now, but the last year we've really seen the progress. He has leveled up in terms of his performances. We're seeing him consistently perform well now. At first there was fluctuations. You'd see a good competition, a good performance, and then a less so. He's been so much more consistent in the last year or two. The level keeps improving every time we see him. Good opportunity for him. He is a very, very big man. I think some of these events will suit him. I think there are still a couple of weaknesses in there for him, but I'm happy to see Eddie invited to this one. So the next man set out a goal. He got injured last year and he said he wanted to get on the podium at Britain's Strongest Man. He wanted to make the final of World's Strongest Man, and he wanted to get himself to the Strongest Man on Earth. Shane Flowers has achieved all 3 of those things this year. He's going to be competing at this year's contest.
And finally we have Bryce Johnson. Now Bryce is another monster-sized athlete. He was 2nd at the official Strongman Games last year, and he placed 3rd in his group at his first World's Strongest Man this year. So then, Lozzie, you know me. Whenever there's a big announcement or something's going on, I like to know what people are thinking, feeling, and saying.
You're just so nosy.
I am nosy. I've been reading all of the comments on Brian's video, on Reddit, on Instagram, lots and lots of places. We've been asked a lot of questions about why is this person invited, why is this person not invited. Paddy Haynes is a name that keeps cropping up time and time again. So Paddy, of course, he's had an incredible start to the year. He placed 4th at Britain's Strongest Man, then he was 2nd at Europe's Strongest Man, and he just competed in and came 5th at his first World's Strongest Man competition. So great run for Paddy. However, no invitation for Paddy. Now, I'm seeing a lot of theories about why people think this might be the case. I'll run them by you and see what you think. A couple of people saying maybe like Paddy's not had the opportunity to show how he'd perform in a max or super heavy competition such as the Strongest Man on Earth.
Look, Paddy is a great strongman, and I don't want to sit here in this video and say why people shouldn't be at the Strongest
No, of course not.
I genuinely think this is a great lineup, 16 athletes. We can always give our reasons why certain athletes haven't been given a chance. Now, Paddy, a friend of mine, I think he's a great strongman. I think what he's done this year is unbelievable. But he's had a lot of opportunities. Been able to compete in a lot of Giants Lives. He's done amazingly well at Europe's Strongest Man. Just done incredible at the World's Strongest Man. I don't think it's a bad thing for him to have a little bit of time off a big show. That back-to-back big shows, he can kind of...
He's doing the Royal Albert Hall.
He's got other big shows as well. Yeah. I think a lot of big shows back-to-back can actually be detrimental to an up-and-coming athlete. Might sound a bit odd, but... it can. I've seen it before where athletes are kind of on the rise and then suddenly they're invited to everything and you are just compounded with competitions. You have no time to prep properly and your performances start to go. So I think for Paddy, avoiding this year is not a bad thing. You know, give him that opportunity next year maybe where he's establishing himself in the major shows, can be a bit more selective about competitions. I think it's a better choice in that respect. I think what Brian's done is given a few people that don't get as many opportunities a chance to compete in this one. Obviously he has his qualifying system, which is you know, looking at a few of the major shows.
He talked about obviously his committee also, where they talk about who they think will suit this competition, which brings me to my next point. Quite a few people were saying maybe he's too small.
I don't think that's the case, to be quite honest. I mean, when you look at the events at Strongest Man on Earth, they are brutal.
Yeah,
but they're brutal for anyone. It doesn't matter who you are. And Paddy, maybe on the pressing, he's going to struggle a little bit, but he's a great deadlifter. He's great at other events.
Most people have weaknesses, though, don't
yes,
they?
Yes, exactly. Everyone's got something in this competition that they'll struggle with. I think Paddy, and I think you could probably add 20 other strongmen that could go in there, and there's events they're going to be good at, there's events they're going to struggle with. I think we've got a great list of athletes here, and I think we need to congratulate the athletes that have got to this. Now what I want to see is these 16 athletes prep hard for this show.
Yeah, but I'm not done with my internet theories.
You've got more of these. This is the difference between me and Auntie Liz. She loves these debates online. I avoid them like the plague.
I like the gossip. All right, no, so moving on from Paddy then, another one. Why Bryce Johnson over Nick Gardione? So
that's an interesting one, and I'll tell you why. Because Nick also competed in Strongest Man on Earth. Not Strongest Man on Earth.
He did the Shore Classic
last
Open
year.
last year.
He came second.
Bryce didn't do it. Mm-hmm. Nick beat him at the official Strongman Games last year. Bryce came second. It was very close. And then at the World Strongest Man, they both placed third in their group. But Nick, when you put all 25 together, he was tied for 11th above Bryce.
Yeah, I mean, like I said...
Again, not having a go at Bryce. Like,
no.
It's a
and
great
you should never have a go at any of the athletes that get the opportunity. I do not believe... any of these guys would be stupid to say, no, I don't want that opportunity.
Yeah, and I really hate seeing comments online, so-and-so shouldn't have been invited. I think, how mean. Yeah. You know how mean? All of these guys work hard.
All these guys should be invited. And there's arguments for others as well. Yeah. And maybe Brian is looking at others. There are potentially guys that could pull out before then.
Tristan Hoth is first alternate. Okay. We know that much. Yep. We don't know if there's a second or who that might be.
But yeah, I mean, there's always going to be arguments for athletes on the way up. And we have spoken before how we want things to be better. Brian does have his qualifying spot. And then, he's allowed to have people he wants to invite.
Well, it is his prerogative after.
If you look at Rogue Invitational, it is basically an invitational. They've got their own qualifying system that they use. Giants Live have their own. All of these are
Arnold's is very much an invitational.
Of course. So these athletes that maybe didn't get the opportunity right this year, keep doing your things. Let these guys focus on this one. Keep competing in the other shows.
They'll be stronger next year.
You do. It makes you hungry.
Yeah.
When you don't get it, you think, right, I'm going to
fuck you.
Yeah. But anyway, let's focus on the athletes that are here. I think this is going to be a hell of a show. There was another thing that Brian mentioned. The tyre is out. And I know a lot of people will be happy about this. I saw Brian's video. He's very deadpan about this, not making a big deal about the tyre. But I do feel some of the chatter online is maybe one of the reasons he's taken that out. A lot of athletes were worried, particularly with how heavy this competition is, finishing off with the tyre, very, very heavy on the biceps.
Yeah.
He has said there's going to be a different part to this element. They will still finish with the power stairs, but there will be a different element to start it off. So interesting change on the events. Other than that, all the events remain the same.
Do you know what's interesting as well? Another thing we should touch upon. In the last couple of weeks, months, whatever, since the events have been announced, there were a lot of comments online implying that, a lot of athletes might choose to sit this one out. They might not do it, they might not do it. But I think this proves that actually athletes really want to do this competition. It's a popular competition and they want to go.
If you're a competitive strongman and you get invited to this show, you're going to do it. Look, if I was invited to this show, I would do it.
What, like this year?
No.
No.
But when I was strong.
Yeah.
Because firstly, it's a great payday.
Yeah.
Secondly, the athletes get treated really well by Brian and Kerry. In my opinion, and if you're a regular viewer of the channel, you'll know I have very similar thoughts to Brian in that I think you need a bigger lineup and you need more events to decide who is the strongest man in the world. I don't feel 5 events is enough to decide a world championships. I kind of look at it like sports like tennis or even like things like darts or
where there's longer formats.
Yes, pool, snooker type things where in the big competitions the format is much longer. The smaller competitions, fine, have your shorter competition. I think 5 events is fine for a Giants Live one-day show, but to decide the strongest man on earth or the world's strongest man, I think it should be 8 to 10 events. I think having 16 athletes lined up is great.
Maybe we can get it to 20.
20 athletes or 20 events?
20 athletes, good God. Don't want to kill them.
I think 16 is a good number, to be honest.
Or we could have 18 and add Paddy and Nick.
I think 16 is absolutely fine. I'm looking forward to seeing the addition of Reino now into this.
Yeah, very much.
Obviously, Reino, the world's strongest man right now.
Lots of eyes on him.
Trey Mitchell, I think, is looking in fantastic shape. His power at World's Strongest Man was unbelievable. This is much more of a power-based show. There won't be so many of those events that he lost points on in this one. Austin Andrade, although not particularly the performance he wanted at World's Strongest Man, he was very, very good at this show last year.
And he was great at the Arnolds as well.
He was indeed. Tom Stoltman working with his new coach. Let's see how he can do it in something that isn't World's Strongest Man. That's going to be an interesting one. Mitch Hooper, he won't be happy with how he did at World's Strongest Man. He'll want to bounce back and reclaim this title. Lucas Hatton, so many different stories. The new guys are going to want to prove that they, deserve to belong. Deserve to be there. They're going to want to shine, even if they don't be a contender for the whole show. There'll be events that they want to shine in. Evan Singleton, this man, we always talk about. He's got the potential. He needs to step up now and prove that he is one of the big contenders, and he's going to want to. After what's happened over the last few shows, he's not been the man he knows he's capable of being. He'll want to step up and get on that podium, maybe try and win this show. Lots of interesting stories. I cannot wait for it.
No, I'm super excited. You're going to be arm wrestling Martins.
I'm going to be arm wrestling Martins. I'm going to smash him down to the pad.
I'm going to be beating up Romark. It's going to be a hell of a weekend.
I mean, the whole weekend is great. You've got Brian Shaw taking on Brandon Allen in the arm wrestling. You've got Eddie Hall and Robert Oberst. That is going to be hilarious. Myself and Martins Lissis will be taking on each other. Obviously, there is the strongest man on earth. There's the Shaw Classic Open with the women, the men's, the weight classes.
There's the festival, there's grip competitions. There's so much happening that weekend.
If you want to come to an event this year, get yourself over to the strongest man on earth. Get over to the Shaw Classic page and book your tickets. We'll be there. We cannot wait. Yeah. Let us know your thoughts on this incredible lineup. Let us know your thoughts on the events. What do you think is going to happen? As always, like, share and subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you guys next time.